You're listening to the Strong and Capable podcast with your host, Brigette Heller.
Hello. Welcome to this episode of The Strong and Capable. I'm your host, Brigette Heller, and we're going to do something a little unique today. I say we because I have one of my favorite humans on earth, Jazzael Taylor, on the podcast with me today. You want to say, hey, Jazzael?
Hello.
And if you have to go watch the YouTube on this because Jazzael has the most beautiful smile. So you just want to watch her. Even when she freezes, it's like perfectly frozen because she's just so always smiley, so beautiful. And today, it was actually Jazzael's idea. A couple weeks ago, we were talking and she was asking me some questions. And she says, Brigette, someday I'm going to come on your podcast and I'm going to flip the script and I'm going to interview you. So today, for the 100th episode of the Strong and Capable podcast, Jazzael is here to flip the script and to interview me and ask the questions that I asked online. I asked if anyone had questions and we got a few. So I'm going to answer some of those, and then whatever her little heart and the spirit dictates she's going to ask. I told her nothing is off limits. She can ask me anything. And so, yeah, Jazzael, I'm going to hand the mic to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be here, and it's such a privilege to do this. So here we go. We're going to get right into it. What brought the Strong and Capable? How did you create it?
Well, the Strong and Capable, actually, the LLC is now What LLC, and it's because mental health has been such a struggle my whole life, and I've been surrounded by those who struggle with mental health themselves. And in the middle of a really intense mental health storm, we'll call it, I was ranting and raving at my day job in the parking lot. You know the parking lot. We parked in that same parking lot for a few years. And I was just like, you know what? There is help for those with mental health, but there's not help for those who are dealing with those with mental health. So I used to compare it to like a detonation zone. The bomb would go off, the mental health bomb, because mental health is so wildly disruptive in our life. It's such a hard struggle and trial. And then there's this detonation zone, and that's all your friends and your family and your coworkers. And those people, there's not a lot of resources for them. And at that time in my life, I found myself and saying to my family members, well, now what? Well, now what? We just had this massive event happen in our life. Now what do we do? Now how do we handle it? Now what? And I just wanted to give hope. I wanted to raise awareness. I wanted to help erase the stigma that is very much still around mental health. Nowadays, it's almost opposite. You say mental health and people roll their eyes like, oh my gosh, we're talking about it again. Like, no, for real. It's so real when you're living it. It's so consuming. And so I just started posting really about just different type. If you go clear back to the beginning, you'll see it was now what, hashtag now what. And it was all about just bipolar or anxiety or depression or postpartum depression. I would just post statistics and tools and things that would help people because I thought the more we talk about it, the less weird it gets.
Wow.
So that was the start. It started there and then it's just morphed.
And it keeps growing. I love it. So what brought you to a podcast? Taking it from that to a podcast?
Yeah. So I took an online class with my then mentor, Kathy Heller, and it was how to start a business kind of a thing. And at the time I had a decorating business with my sister and I was doing this little now what, and it really quickly, I realized that the decorating business was just fine and we had fun with it, but it was what it was. But this class was obviously for now what, which then became the Strong and Capable. And she told us we were going to start a podcast like week 9 into this class. And I actually stomped my feet around my house. I was slamming doors. I was like, I am not starting a podcast. I acted like a 3-year-old. I totally did. And I walked upstairs, stomped up my little stairs. And I told my husband, we have wasted all of our money. And it was a huge investment for us at the time because she's telling me to start a podcast. And there's no way I'm doing that. I don't like the sound of my voice. No one will be able to say my name right. I'm going to lose all my friends when I embarrass myself. Like, I'm not doing that. I don't know. Technology, what the heck? I don't know technology. No way. And he he listens to podcasts. He's actually listened to every episode of the Strong and Capable podcast. He's like my number one listener and tells me what I need to fix. He's my biggest champion. And he said, why not? With the message you have, with the bridges you want to build, why not? And when your biggest cheerleader, when he questions you, when your best friend, biggest cheerleader questions you and you thought they were going to like rage with you, it makes you pause. And so I did. And when I paused, as soon as I cracked open my heart to divine inspiration, the ideas and the people and the subjects just came flooding in. And there was no doubt I was supposed to start a podcast. So that's how it started, was in me being a stinker and Mike questioning me.
I love that. It gave me the chills because you said all the ideas just kept coming. So did the ideas for each episode, it was natural? Did it come naturally to you?
Yeah, I'm an organizer. This is one of the things I've learned that's unique about me in the podcasting world. There's a lot of people that just want to podcast as their little heart directs them, but I don't feel like that's very polite to your audience. They don't have anything to rely on. And if they're coming to you for a purpose, you should respect that. So I had like, here's my story arc. We're going to go from disempowered and struggling and not loving who you are to totally empowered and free and flying. And these are the tools I think will help. And we're going to talk about spirituality and mindset and mental health, because people keep trying to separate them, but really they're all connected. And I literally had 3 seasons mapped out, what the journey was going to look like, what are the subjects, what are the tools, and then names of people that I had associated with over the years. Ironically, hardly any of those names actually ended up on the podcast.
Wow.
But the names gave me like, oh, okay, I can do this. So that's how inspiration comes. A lot of times you get the idea, you're like, oh, okay, well, if I do it with that person, of course I could do this. And then it doesn't work out, but it doesn't matter, because once you've already said yes, it's easier to keep going forward, even when things don't work out as you planned.
Wow. So under the umbrella of the Strong and Capable, you have the Queen Circle, you teach podcasting, you do so much, and you're still talking on stages. How do you keep showing up so authentically in all of that that's under the Strong and Capable?
Okay, the short answer to that is I don't have the energy to pretend.
Yeah.
And I was raised, my dad was a business owner. And so I would go to conferences and we were taught how to stand in a booth, how to present yourself. I would wear like a little business suit at 14 in my high heels. I felt so cool. And it was my responsibility to bring people into the booth. And then my dad would talk to them about the product. And so I was raised to put on a show, essentially. I was in performing choir. I traveled with a dance group. And in my adult life, I just did not have the energy to do the show, and it wouldn't be consistent. And if I'm all about mental health is real. You don't get to pretend in that, or you do pretend so long that it wipes you out and you shut down. And so I had learned from my own mental health struggles and through that I just didn't have the energy or the time to continue a charade. I might be able to initially do it and do it really well, but I wouldn't be able to continue it. And again, that's not fair to my audience. I saw too many women pretending to be one thing, becoming wildly successful, and then they'd lose their marriage, their family, their religion. And I just thought, if I don't go in this authentically, then I will lose everything I love, and I don't want to do that. So
yeah, that makes sense. And so you're at the 100th episode, like this is big. How do you keep going and recording episode after episode? You show up authentically, you do all the things, but what gets you to the next episode?
So what gets me to the next episode actually is God, because every time I'm like, I don't think I'm making that big of an impact. And I don't know if this is really needed. And this is a lot of work. And I keep embarrassing myself over and over by showing up the way I do. So this isn't really necessary at this point for my growth. It'll be like that day, someone will message me, hey, I just listened to this podcast and I really needed it today. Or someone will say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. Please keep going. Or they'll ask me questions about, I'm struggling with this. What can I do? And I'm like, oh, I should podcast about that. I can do that. I can help them by sharing this way. And then just the co-creation of it. I love having deep conversation. And it's not very popular socially to walk in a room and say, tell me your deepest desires or what you're struggling with the most in this world. But that's what I want to know. And so on the podcast, I get to get online and say, hey, this is Shelly so-and-so, and Shelly's going to tell me about her hardest moment in her life, and it's going to be great.
That's true.
So really, I just get to be myself, and there's like, no one has to judge me for it. I just get to be me. It's
That's
safe.
Yeah, that is good because at the end of the day, you show up and you do it, and you do it so honestly that it shines. So that's good. So what's your favorite episode? You've done episode after episode, you've had guest speakers. Which one has been one that stands out?
So you know what's funny is the ones that stand out are not the ones that you would think would stand out. I made a list of these are the people that if I could get on the podcast, that my mentors or my heroes at the time, like if I could get this person on the podcast, I've made it. They've written this book and it changed my life. So I'm going to have them on the podcast and I've made it. Every person that I wanted or have wanted at some point has been on the podcast, or I'm still chasing it. There are definitely a whole list I'm still chasing, but it was the other conversations that I loved most because those people are so practiced in what they do that they come on, and it was great. It was a great interview, great tips, but it felt not as authentic. And so the local people that I had on that I'd run into that I was inspired by, like Stephanie Hitchens, I will never forget the day she said, I am enslaved by my own expectations. And when she said that, I remember just sitting back in that and thinking about what expectations have I created of myself that I'm enslaved by because I'm not willing to release them. I'm not willing to hand them over. I'm not, or follow through with them. What am I enslaved by? I'll never forget that. It changed my life forever. And Erin Horn was one of my very first ones. She talked about how she had cancer and watching her baby walk from the room in the hospital. That was her baby's first steps. That's how she saw them because it was during COVID. And even now I say that I get chills. I just had Danny Deaton on the podcast. He'll be on in a few weeks for those listening. But when he told his story, I was speechless. I didn't know almost how to respond to it. So these real humans that have suffered and overcome, they're the definition of strong and capable. Those have been by far my favorite conversations.
Absolutely. Wow, that's good. You ask these people to be your guests, you're doing these journeys, you do things, and we see all the greatness. But what happens when you get rejected? What process do you go through if someone either doesn't want to come on the show or you did a speaking contest and you went so far? What is that when you get that door slammed in your face? What does that feel like?
Well, the thing is when I decided to go on this journey, I had to make the decision that doors closing were actually just redirecting me to the doors that were open. And so I had to make that decision right out the gate, and I did make that decision. And so anytime someone said no, usually it's not a no, though. Honestly, people say it's hard to get guests on a podcast. I hear that from clients all the time. It's so hard. I'm like, well, that's because you haven't let me teach you how. But 9 times out of 10, they say yes. That's very rare. People want to share their story. They want to share their message, whether they're writing books or not. We all want to be seen and heard and valued for our expertise. And so I don't usually get a no, but when I do, I just feel like it's redirection to what then is the more powerful door at this time. And it's almost always the unexpected door, like I talked about earlier. And so I don't know, there's not a lot of no's. And if there is a no, I'm just like, okay, fine. It's not meant to be. And if I pushed it, are you sure? Then that's, I don't know. Again, not in service to my audience. If it's not right, it's not right.
That's good. That's a good outlook. What has been something that has challenged you and stretched you the most in running the Strong and Capable?
Oh, well, I mean, okay, so technology out the gate was I
Yes.
knew nothing, but I knew here's what I can do. I was thinking earlier, I was like, how did I get through all that? Because
Yeah.
I'm now savvy, but I was not at all. And I
Mhm.
was like, God and Google. It was God and Google. Like that's really what got me through all of that. You can Google anything. There's a YouTube video for everything. And then God just shoving me along. So it was God and Google that got me through that part of it. But now I forgot your question because I got distracted by God and Google.
What's been the biggest thing to stretch you in all this process?
It's the keeping going. It's the keeping going, like we kind of talked about earlier, because the fact is the Strong and Capable is hitting 100 episodes. But also the fact is it gets around 200 listens an episode. So when you think about like, wow, that's amazing. It's not, I'm not getting 1,000 downloads. I'm not getting 1,000,000 downloads, but I'm still in the top 3% of podcasts. So when you think about that, think at how many people stop because they only got 30 listens or only got 10 listens. And yet 10 people were changed by their message. 10 people needed that day. And so just keeping in perspective that my big markers may not be the same as other people's, but that doesn't make them less important.
Yeah.
That's been challenging. It has been challenging to keep going and not being embarrassed by that. Not being that's one of the things I've had to like own and celebrate is, you know what? I kept going. I kept going. And I was thinking today, I have some things written down. I might read them because I always forget in the moment. I get all excited about stuff. And I actually told Jazzael earlier, like I told you earlier, I was like, I'm really good at speaking on the fly and I'm really good at writing things out. But the in between, the marriage of the two is not always my forte. So I wrote a few things, like a few lessons. And one of them was transformation is truly sacred and the most important work we take on in this life. I learned that from the podcast because the person I was, the girl I was 100 episodes ago, not even remotely the same, not
Yeah.
even a little bit. And that was all just one stretch at a time, one next brave moment. And then, so the next thing was the more you choose to be wildly brave, the more you will come to deeply love who you are. And I saw yesterday, I did a meditation and a visualization, and in part of this meditation, it was thank that person who got you to this moment. And the girl, I'm going to cry. I always announce it. I'm going to cry. But I noticed that about myself. That's the other thing when you podcast, you start to learn your funny ticks. The girl who sat in a closet 100 episodes ago, crying and yelling at God because she didn't think she could do it. And almost huddled in a ball, just so scared to put her message out there to the person I am now. I feel more myself than I ever have before. And yet that girl who was so scared was the one who was brave enough to still take the step forward. And so I'm so thankful to her because she was a hot mess, but she tried anyway. And in the trying comes the doing, and in the doing comes the transformation. And then you don't recognize yourself anymore. And you always have to be thankful for where you're at right now because that person right now is the one who's going to take this first step forward to becoming who you want to become. So, yeah.
That was beautiful. I love it. And with that, you see all of these things. What do you hope to leave for your kids when they get all this? So many, many, many years from now, you leave this earth. What do you hope to leave for your children?
So actually, that's the coolest part about a podcast. I realized if I were to get in a car wreck today, no day is promised, right? No day is promised. So if something happened to me today, my most important thoughts, or most of them, a lot of them, are recorded in 100 episodes. My thoughts on who we are as humans, how to be wildly brave, how to work through your mindset, how to remember who you are when you feel lost. They're recorded in these episodes. And I realized one day, I'm terrible at journaling. I'm not even very good at our personal social media. It's like once every 6 months because I have to do so much on the business that I'm not very, but they have this podcast where their mom showed up and told her truth to the world and how to find yourself again. And if that's the one gift I can leave them, I'm pretty proud of that, actually. So this is a legacy. This is a way of leaving that voice for them that they could always tune into and hear.
It's an
pretty cool.
audible journal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Your own
Because
personal journal, that's all audio.
yeah, when I look back on the things I shared, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is embarrassing. What made you say? And today we're going to discuss like
So true.
so
But you
embarrassing.
didn't, and you know what? It made for a good episode.
Well, so usually the ones I have these realizations. Like I'll never forget, probably 2 seasons ago, I'm Christian, and I was like, I'm gonna just admit it on the podcast. I'm just gonna say it because I try and be very respectful to all beliefs because I really, really believe that God is so big and so infinite, and that we are humans trying to put words to this incredible eternal concept and being, and we just can't. No matter how. And so there's so many religions and beliefs, but if you really start digging in, because I'm a very curious human, if you really start digging in, there is a commonality in all of them, in repentance, forgiveness, in love, in connection. They all have these same themes. And so I was like, I'm just going to say I'm Christian because I never want to hurt somebody's feelings. I never want to turn them off to the podcast. But if I don't own my full truth, I'm not helping as much as I could because I'm trying to hold back and navigate this weirdness. And I will never forget afterwards, this lady messaged me. She's like, Brigette, we know. I was like, what? She's like, honey, you don't hide it very well. We know.
Yeah.
So I think that's so much of life. We're like pretending or trying to navigate this, but people know who we are. It's just us being weird. It just cracked me up because, yeah, I'm not very good at I'm not good at pretending, as we already discussed.
Yes, no, so true. That's good though. You give so much to us. You give so much to your audience through the Strong and Capable. You host classes and so on. What do you do to center yourself and take care of your own mental health when you're serving and gathering so many people?
It's a good question. I'm not always good at it. Honestly, I'm not always good at taking care of myself and centering myself. But when I'm on it, I do a lot of practices, including like I have them all on my desk here because proximity is power. Whether you're in a room with people or the book is near you. So the Fresh View Journal, like I teach this class, but I don't just teach it, I do it. When I'm struggling, I write out my thoughts. I see what patterns are happening up there. The other one I have on my desk right now is my current mentor, which is Jazzael Taylor, and hers is I Choose Joy. And every day it's 10 gratitude practices, 4 goals, what you give grace to, so what you're going to let go of, and what you've learned, because you have to read for half an hour something every day. I meditate, I pray. I don't read my scriptures. I listen to them when I'm doing my makeup every morning. And then honestly, my best moments, I've learned to figure out, when do I receive instruction? When do I hear things? So I receive things in the shower. Really something about that shower. I have a whole episode on that, shower preaching. And then a lot of times when I'm cleaning, because there's just that, like, I'll let my mind go quiet, and just that I'm cleaning counters, I'm doing dishes, I'm just in something I don't have to think about, so I can just let my mind wander. And then driving. I've learned how to tune into those times and allow what's going to come so that it's easy to serve people. I'm just receiving messages and sharing them. I'm not trying to create stuff. I'm just being a conduit for those things I hear. And that's a lot easier. It's not forced.
Yes.
That's kind of, yeah. And one of the things I've learned a lot about, I think I even posted about on social media today, but if you want to go somewhere, if you want to grow, you have to let go of stuff too. You have to let go. For me, so much of growing was letting go of the stories in my head. It wasn't even bad habits. My coach, Jazzael Taylor, we have to be accountable every week. What are you letting go of? What are you letting go of? And as I thought about it, I'm like, I actually don't have that many bad habits. Like I don't. I live a very clean lifestyle, but I have a lot of avoidance tactics. So I have to let go of those. And those are hard because it's much safer to hide behind things. Hiding is I'd rather go my little turtle shell than face the
Yes.
stuff.
So true. And it's so good to see that through a podcast, we see you're put together, you're well spoken, but then you also have life happening right outside of that. So you're just normal. You are normally being a mom, a wife, and all the other things in between. So
Okay, so for anyone listening, Jazzael has done a season of Connected in Christ with me, and life is a hot mess behind the scenes. Always, it's like always stuff. And we thankfully had like this background that blurred, because if not, you guys wouldn't have let me be on the show anymore. I had so much going on. Like my son, my 14-year-old, I don't even care if he feels bad about being called out for this. He purposefully, if he sees my on-air light on, he will come in the room and purposefully will be like dancing. He'll hit the screen. He will purposely try to distract me just to see if he can. This does not sound like a 14-year-old.
and she holds it together like she's composed the entire time. So it's so funny to know that's all happening.
Oh, it's wild. It's wild actually. But when I was in the Great American Speak Off, one of the challenges they had is we had to go live on Instagram for 45 seconds, catch their attention and keep their attention. And in the middle of it, a light fell down and a crew member was chasing after it. And this is like huge cameras, all the lights, is Grant Cardone, Canix, like big production. And I did my thing and I was on it. I was just in there with the audience. And after the light went down and they shut it off, Jimmy, the judge, he's like, Brigette, you rocked that. You were so good. You didn't even flinch when it went down. I said, well, if you had a son on slightly on the spectrum, as he'd like me to say on the podcast. And he's like, tell him I'm slightly on the spectrum, and 100-pound dog that barged in every podcast episode or every live you'd ever done, then a light falling down is nothing.
You're like, that's easy peasy.
That was no big deal. I just want to make sure the dude was okay afterwards.
Totally.
But it was all on show. They did it on purpose to see if it would make you react.
And of course, you did it. I love it. That's a good memory. What is something that has been so memorable that's really just is something that keeps you going in all of this, because you know that when you finish it, it's so good. Whatever that goal is, or
I don't know. That's actually so. When you start with dreams and plans, at first they seem so huge, but then you get to them pretty quickly if you just little step at a time. And one of the places I'm in right now is trying to figure out what is the next dream, what is the next challenge, because there are so few things that actually make me nervous now. Whereas when I started, everything scared me. That's actually in the stage where I'm at right now, is exploring what's the next level. What is that look like? What do I want? What would make me excited? When we hit 100 downloads, or no, it's 1,000 downloads on the podcast, my husband and I went to breakfast. I was like, okay, what would be the next thing that we'd be like, so proud? What would that be? I don't actually know. I think for me, probably 100 queens. I really want 100 queens in the Queen Circle. I want to build this beautiful community of women who are authentic and connect and just love on each other. They have a safe place to be themselves. That is so rare in this world. And I'm good at creating places like that because that's who I am. And I just expect people around me to be that too.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised. I'm like, wait, we're not being authentic here? Oh shoot, that's not my crowd. I need to leave. Literally, that's happened many times. And so I think probably 100 queens would be the next, like, okay. So this work matters. And people, my goal with the Strong and Capable is always to help people love themselves, because here's how it goes. And you and I have talked about this, and this is what started this conversation a couple weeks ago. When you are a child, or when you've been traumatized, some people, it's just being a child. Some people have been through trauma, big trauma, little trauma, you've been through trauma. It is your ego that keeps you safe. It is your ego that gets you out of bed. It's your ego that makes you stay in the marriage, even if it's not sometimes healthy. It's your ego that keeps you at the job, paying the bills. It's your ego that helps sometimes get your kids ready in the morning. It's your ego that lets go of things you don't want to let go of because you don't want to make a bigger problem. So your ego can be a dangerous thing and usually gets a bad rap, but actually when you've been through hard stuff, your ego is your best friend because it keeps you going. It keeps you going. And that's why when I say I love that person, she was totally ego driven, but she was just surviving the best she knew how. And so your ego happens. Well, then you go on the journey of the strong and capable. If you listen to every episode, I don't see how you cannot love yourself afterwards, only because I know in the 3 years I've done it, how different I am. And it's
Right.
using these same tools. I don't teach anything I wouldn't use or don't use regularly. So you get to know, standing in the mirror and saying, I am strong. I am loved. I have value. I am a good mom. Things that we don't always say. The internet's version of self-love is lame. It's go on trips, have a tribe, and do your toes. But that is not self-love. That might be taking care of yourself, and it's good for you. I like those things too. But self-love is when someone says you're an idiot, having the grace and kindness for self to know that that's just not true. That is not. And so you have to develop love. And at first, it feels weird because you're reteaching yourself who you are. You knew when you were born, but you lose it through life. And then comes the release of that, and the release of ego completely, the release of self again in service to others is the hardest journey to go on. But that's when you can really step into your purpose and really do your thing. That's when all those fears drop away. It will mean you have to be brave, but in being brave, you become the best version of yourself. So I don't know. That's the journey. And once again, I don't remember what you asked because I'm just a talker, Jazzael. You know what's funny about it is I was on a podcast for someone else last week.
Yeah.
And he said, you said you were shy when you were little. I was. I didn't speak until about sophomore year. And then I decided after moving too many times that I didn't care what people thought about me anymore. And I started speaking. Then I went through depression, lost myself again about 10, 15, 20 times, so many times. And I stopped speaking. And there was something about this last 3 years that now that I've opened my mouth to speak truth, I just can't, I don't shut up. I just keep talking. I can't stop it.
The questions in between, and then you give us so many good nuggets in there that I'm like, oh, gotta write that down. So you're making up for all that time.
There's so many things. There's so many things to say.
You know what I appreciate about you the most is when you do share and you're answering these questions, you speak almost like a story. You're telling a story. So you really engage and capture our attention. And then you just want to keep us saying. I know for me,
Thank
that's
you.
So,
well, life should be a good story. That's why, like I said, I like to hide in stories. That is my favorite place to be. But I think authors are the most brilliant people on earth, especially fantasy, sci-fi, because they're exploring the human journey and emotions in a way that without limits. And so it allows them to go deeper and further. And I can tell you, I was at book club the other night and I made a bold statement, but I stand behind it. A good author has done the work. They know who they are. They've explored emotions. An author who's not done the work, because their characters are weak. Their characters fall. Their characters are always scared. There's so many weak women characters in the world. And I believe it's because the authors have not done the work they need to do. So they can only tell the story as far as they've gone themselves.
Yes. Isn't that the truth?
Whoa. It's true. It's true for us. We can only tell the story as far as we've gone ourselves.
Absolutely. With everything you do, you're a gatherer. You've said it before. I've seen it. I've been a part of the gathering. What gave you that instinct that you were good at that and that you had that gift?
Okay, so remember how I was shy? So I was the awkward girl on the outside, the wallflower where everyone's dancing and having fun, and I'm just standing there wishing I could be a part of it. That has been me more of my life than not. And so when you're the wallflower, but you desperately want to be part of things, you're highly observant. All I did was people watch the first half of my life. That's all I did. And because I have anxiety, people with anxiety are searching for the thread at all times. So you get to know, you can see when someone's starting to escalate their temper. You can see when someone's frustrated or angry. I can look in a crowd and pin people quickly because I lived my whole life in fear the first half of it. And I watched So this is like a gift, but it comes from not the best place. And what I started realizing is there were more people like me than not. There are more people who wished they could be part of the thing than not. So if you come to an event at my house or you come to the Queen Circle, this has been probably the hardest thing. Every business class I've taken, what's your niche? What's your niche? What's your niche? I'm like, my niche is everybody. Everybody who's willing to be real, everybody who has never totally felt part of the in crowd. And that's actually just everybody. There are so few people who actually have a tribe and feel comfortable in that, and that it's authentic and real. So I'm a gatherer because basically I'm not scared to look at someone and say, I see you and I honor who you are. Come hang out with me. I want to learn more about you because every person is so freaking cool. They're so cool. And so it makes it easy to gather people when you're willing to just see them and love them right where they're at.
So good. I love that. And that's so great about you because you do those things, and people, listeners, your listeners have to know the people she gathers, the people Brigette gathers are people of all kinds. And so she does see the beauty in everyone and will meet you right where you are. So that's so good.
Everyone has a story to tell and everyone has limitless potential. The thing that usually stops us is it's always ourselves. It's always ourselves.
What is something any advice you would give us on all the things that you've learned from the girl that was hiding in her closet crying, asking why, to now?
So I wrote some things down. I will read them because I feel like I wrote them better than I would speak them.
I love that. Let's hear it.
But okay. So each moment in your life is only as big as you make it. It's only as big as you make it. And then coming to know yourself is like a slow sunrise. It's beautiful in each moment. It's faster than you think, and yet slow as you experience it. Releasing yourself to something bigger, God, purpose, bravery, is like a sun setting. You have to let go of everything you thought you found and knowingly walk into the dark with peace in your heart and confidence in your steps. To keep going when everyone else around you loses the excitement is the test of how deeply you believe in something, you feel it, how deeply you know you're meant to do it. And it's okay to ask for divine confirmation. That is something I had to do so many times. Is this actually what I'm supposed to be doing? Because again, I'm not getting 1,000 listens. I got 100, I got 200, I got 300, like I got 50 this time. Is this actually what I'm supposed to be doing? And then being strong is not the same as being perfect. Being perfect comes from a place of fear, but strength comes from a place of courage, bravery, and peace. It's not the same.
Yes.
So those are the things that I have learned. Some of them. I have so many other things written down because as I've thought about this journey, if you want to get to know yourself, start speaking your truth. Start speaking your truth. And when you do, people might question it, which makes you explore it more. Or they'll respond to it, which will confirm like, oh, that's needed in the world. You got to speak truth because that's how we love each other. That's how we help each other. I would say speak the truth with kindness. We all need it. And we're living in a world that's fake and pretend. And it's not serving us. So, yeah.
That was beautiful. I love this. I loved this time together because you gave me the chills. I wish everyone could see. I just kept getting chills down my spine because the things that you say mean something and you're not just saying it just to say words. So I appreciate that you think those things through, you pray through everything, and you make sure that you have the wisdom and knowledge you need to move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for asking.
My party hat to let you know that I'm wearing a party hat. So if you can't see me, we are celebrating you. We're celebrating the strong and capable. We're celebrating all the things in between, in the middle, the Queen Circle, all of your Facebook. She hosts great Facebook classes. If you are on there, you need to do that because
Oh, it says cheers. I love it. Jazzael, I adore you. You know I do. And I'm glad you asked because I'm glad you had this idea. I'm glad you asked this. This is hard. Like I could have said just all these things on my own, but it's way more fun. Co-creation is so, so much better than doing it on your own. And
100%.
yeah, for me, the celebration is like, yeah, I made it here. Yeah, I transformed as we've talked about, but the celebration is that there are people brave enough to hear it and to do the work too. That's the celebration, that it has consistently and slowly grown, and that there are women out there stepping into who they are, and the world so desperately needs men and women who are brave enough to throw off the world and be themselves. So that's the celebration for me, is that I can still be here telling these truths because there are people coming to the Facebook classes. There are people listening to podcasts. There are people showing up on Instagram. I would love to get to 10,000. That's my goal. Like everything, I'm like 100 queens, 10,000 Instagram. Like I want to get all the ones and zeros.
There's your next step. You had said you weren't sure what the next thing to celebrate. That's what we're going to celebrate next.
Yeah. 10,000 Instagram. We'll celebrate that next. I should hit 5,000 this week. So there's only, just got to double that.
You got this. It's all right.
It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, the last thing I'll say too is don't ever I can't tell you, when I went in the deepest depression of my life, I had people messaging me telling me how successful I was. So don't ever, ever compare yourself to someone else, because you have no idea what is really going on. And this is a celebration because through the highs and lows, like I showed up, you as a listener showed up, and we're going to keep going until it's 1,000 podcasts, until it's 10,000 on Instagram, until it's 100 queens. Like we're going to keep going because this work matters. It matters that people know they're strong and capable.
So good.
All right. Shall we wrap this up? I think we've been talking a long time.
Really good. I could be here all for hours with you. So thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and working with you is just a gift in itself. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jazzael. Thank you. And thank you for all of you who are listening. Thank you for showing up, and for your messages, and for your encouragement, and for your reposts, because it all matters. That's how I know that you're taking it in and seeing it and feeling it. So thank you for that, and for all of your love over all these 100 episodes. Okay. And never forget, friends, you are strong and capable.
Hey. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Strong and Capable podcast. I would love to connect with you. Come find me on Instagram at Brigette.Heller or Facebook in the Strong and Capable Facebook group. And if you would love to join the Queen Circle, which I know you do, it's only 99 cents for your first clip. So come try it out. $1. It's the best place on the internet. Have a wonderful day, and never forget, you are strong and capable.